Hey folks, it's Billy DKY, the truth seeker that simplifies and demystifies. This is going to be my video on spiritual work is messy until you're done. This was inspired by my clueless sister, which I've just recently got on Facebook and, connected with people and family and whatnot. And she sent me an email she posted on my wall basically an article about neurosis and personality disorders, and she basically was saying I was crazy, in a subtle way. So this is I'm going to stamp that out. I'm going to stamp that ignorance out right now. Okay. And also, those of you who watched my video the other day on Joe Rogan and DMT, which I blew up pretty bad on, today, I was going to blow up again, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go do some exercise, come back, and I'm glad I did. So, making progress, that's what it's about, growing. Okay. Next point, your family and friends truly can be your worst enemy on the spiritual path. Thinking you're crazy and this and that. St. Francis of Assisi, in his process to conquer his mind and become the enlightened person, people thought he was crazy. And you also see that with, Jesus and the Buddha. When Jesus would say, you look at the plank in my eye, but you don't see you look at the speck in my eye, but you don't see the plank in your eye. And the Buddha ran into some problems too. While he was conquering himself, I think he pissed some people off, and then after he reached enlightenment, this guy come back that he pissed off, and he threw a rock at the Buddha's foot and hurt him. So, okay. Next point, real spiritual work is like working on a car. If you go look at your car in the process of getting something done, it will be a complete mess. Your parts are laying all over the place. Just imagine you had something wrong with your engine, you had to have it rebuilt. Can you imagine how spread out and nasty it would look if you came in mid-progress of it being worked on? It would be an absolute nightmare. And it's the same way in your mind. That's what a real spiritual path is about. It's about conquering all this stuff in there. People say, oh, it's original sin, you can't conquer it. Yes, you can conquer all of it, and I am doing it, and these other guys have done it too. It's not a big deal. And here's what Lao Tzu said. Knowing harmony is consistency. Knowing consistency is enlightenment. And in the process of conquering all this stuff, you're not going to be consistent. You're going to be all over the place. You're going to have to be dealing with all kinds of emotions and this and that and impulses, and it can look pretty messy, and you will look crazy because you're dealing with it. You're not running from it like everybody else is. You're watching it. You're stable in the mind, and they can see it, and they can see it, but you got to steal it so you can see it. In the process of you seeing it, they're seeing it too, and they're calling you crazy. So again, it's like working on your car. I'm going to do all kinds of crazy stuff until I conquer it all. It's not a big deal. It doesn't mean I'm crazy. It means I'm dealing with it. Okay, next point, your mind is like an iceberg. We're going to take two different approaches to this. First, we're going to take the iceberg approach, and then we're going to do ego circle. So, this is sort of like your mind right here. This is the water line. This is an iceberg, this triangle-looking or pyramid-looking thing. At the top here, that's the problems you're consciously aware of, and the problems down here are the problems you're unconsciously or subconsciously aware of. And so this is where you really make real spiritual progress, and then this just represents the sun, obviously. And so what happens is you deal with those conscious problems, and I like to do this, make a triangle with your arm. This part down here is the unconscious, and this triangle right here is the conscious problem. So this is what you deal with. And a lot of people, and I thought this many times as I was working on this, I'd be done. Oh, I just have to conquer this. But as soon as I would do that, just like an iceberg, more stuff would float up from beneath. So here's how it really goes. You'll work on your little iceberg. You'll work on these problems right here because these are the ones you can really work on. And as you do, more will float up into your consciousness, and it'll keep floating up until, boom, it'll be tiny and it'll be done. And this though is getting really close to your ego, so you're becoming very arrogant and neurosis or whatever, So, okay. So that's how that really happens. And, oh yeah, back on the end here, and this is what Lao Tzu's getting at too, is you're reaching more and more in harmony. After you pop past this last part, you don't have any more problems. That's enlightenment. Okay, and then this is another, I'm going to look at it from a different angle. It's the same problem, but just looked at in a different angle, like looking at anything from a different angle. It's like looking at a cylinder from this side, it looks like a circle, but you turn it this way, it looks like a square. So we're just going to take a different angle. So let's say this is your mind here. You got all these problems. Ego, cockiness, anxiety, judgmental, fear, anger, feeling of superiority, depression, need to feel important, impatience, which stems from greed. All this stems from ego, which is a sense of self. Okay, and so then this sort of brings in where you're consciously aware of and what you're not So the red line represents this stuff here is your unconscious problems that you're not aware of. And notice you're just a little bit aware of all these problems. But as you start making real spiritual progress, you start dealing with these little issues on the outside, and you just keep working in until you get the ego. So an example would be, let's say you made some spiritual progress. You've dealt with some aggression, cockiness, anxiety, judgmental, anger, feeling of superiority, depression, need to feel important, impatience. And so you're getting closer and closer to your arrogance and your ego and this whatnot. Until eventually you get to here, where it's basically there's no problems. You're just, and I don't really know exactly how it's going on, if the ego's going to pop away or how or what's going to happen, because I'm not there yet, so I'm not going to claim something I don't already know. And so that's how it really works. Your mind is like an iceberg. As you deal with these conscious problems, more unconscious problems will float up into consciousness, and you'll get closer and closer to that ego, to that arrogance that you have inside. And what happens is you make progress. You come across new problems that you're not skillful in it yet to know how to handle them, and so they spew out into society and in some of my videos and stuff, and that's just the way it is. And so people think you're crazy, or oh, he's so arrogant. I mean, you got to let it out to work on it. Like I say, be yourself, but continue to prove, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I live exactly what I preach. Very little hypocrisy here. Okay. Also, your mind is like a Your mind is like a knotted up ball of yarn. If you take a ball of yarn that's all knotted up, how do you untangle it? You start from the very end and you just gently untangle it one knot at a time, and it'd be a mess in the process. You'd have yarn all over the place. But then when you get it done, then you can roll it up in a nice little ball and everything's done. That's the same way in spiritual path. You're just untangling all this mess, clearing it up, and getting harmony with life the way it really is. That's how it's really done. That's why people who are great truth seekers are considered crazy in, midway through their process. Just like, again, when you're getting your car worked on, if you go stop the mechanic midway through and look at what's going on, it's going to be a mess. Just like the same if you build a house, until they get everything done, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be pitiful, So, so if you think I'm crazy, you're really screwed up. You really don't know what I'm doing. You don't understand how this is all transpiring. And if you want to get on a real spiritual path too, you're going to have to go through everything I did. And that's why a lot of people don't do it, because they don't want to go through it. They don't want to look crazy. They're not willing to do whatever it takes to conquer their mind. So anyway, okay. Well, okay. So anyway, basically when I become famous, these are going to be some good stories to tell. It's like, oh, there you go, neurosis again. I don't care. I'm just pointing out the obvious facts. You know what I'm saying? I already know what people are thinking. So, anyway, in the past, people who from YouTube has watched my videos, I've talked about this stuff when I said your mind is like an iceberg. I've talked about the speck in my eye and the plank in your eye. I've talked in other videos. Let me just read what I wrote there, because I'm sick of her standing over, and I probably shouldn't read this, but I'm going to anyway because I want to. So this is my response to her writing on my wall on Facebook. You need to quit trying to change me. Instead, focus on one thing that you truly can change yourself. Which that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm not focused on changing. I'm focused on changing me. I get tired of you trying to stand over me like a policeman when you're grossly overweight and you run from every emotional issue you have. Seriously, look at your life. You've made so many mistakes that it's pitiful. Then you want to talk down to me like you have the answers when you're clueless. You have no idea what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. Then you post shit like that on my wall for the whole world to see. Basically, you're saying I'm crazy. I know clearly what I'm doing. If you would listen instead of talk, you just might learn something that might help you. Show me the proper respect I deserve for the hard work I've done, I put in for changing myself, and the work I'm currently putting in, or I will delete you as a friend. I'm done with your bullshit. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Some of you might have hated, you shouldn't have done that. But I was like, you know what? There's a time and place where you can't take no more. You got to put people in their proper place. You can only take so much abuse and lack of understanding and calling you crazy when they're the one that's crazy. So, till the next video, later folks.